Welcome to the Decks of the Week, the weekly series where I showcase the top 10 best decks in Marvel Snap. These decks have been determined using a wide variety of sources to ensure that you're getting the most reliable stats as possible in Marvel Snap. If you like the sports series, hitting the like button is the best thing you can do. It's free and it's all that YouTube cares about. Regardless, let's get started with deck number 1, which is Marvelous Hawk. Running a 59% win rate, Marvelous Hawk is currently the best deck in Marvel Snap from a win rate perspective. This deck does a lot of things really well. It has the vertical power of Darkhawk, the disruption capabilities of the Darkhawk shell, but it also has the wide power of Miss Marvel. And also, it's very notable that this deck gives you the flexibility of playing multiple different costs at different locations. It's not overstacked in any one particular cost, and the result is that you're very effectively able to lock down games on turn 6 with Goliath, or if you need to do the additional reach with Doctor Doom as well. The deck works really well. I really do like it. The Iron Lad is an additional piece that allows you to reach deeper into the deck if you so choose, but regardless, between disruption and also the straight up vertical and horizontal power of Darkhawk and Miss Marvel, you basically are able to do anything. This deck really has no fundamental weakness. I mean, unless it's Enchantress, but regardless, one of the absolute best decks in the game right now. Marvelous Hawk. Deck number 2 is Annie by Night. Now, what's interesting about this is that Annihilus has been somewhat ho-hum in terms of win rates. Now, this deck seems to stand above the rest in terms of its overall capabilities, and ironically, it's a Werewolf by Night with Annihilus deck. This should be no surprise. Werewolf by Night is one of the best cards in the game right now, and we'll just say that anytime you do a shell with Werewolf by Night, it just elevates whatever else you happen to be doing with it. In this case, you're really not using that many Annihilus enablers with respect to just basically the Hood and Sentry, but Sentry is 420 blazing if you use Annihilus, so why wouldn't you use it, right? So it's just straight up vertical power with the Sentry, the disruption of the Void, and while Destroy represents 10% of the meta right now, it's largely due to the fact that this is still Annihilus weak. So what's going to be happening here is that as Annihilus drops in popularity, as people stop experimenting with the card, this deck's win rate will likely start to rise because people will be more susceptible to that Sentry into Annihilus play kicking over the Void, because negative 10 power on the right location can be quite difficult to deal with, especially when you consider that Werewolf is going to be bouncing all over the place anyway, generating a lot of value. A very strong deck and currently the best shell with Annihilus. Deck number 3 is She-Not. No surprises here with the reduction of the popularity and the outright nerf of Mobius. She-Not continues to be a very viable play. At a 59% win rate, it is one of the best decks in the game right now. What's unique about She-Not is the fact that it is still running the leech kind of play, which is interesting because it really nullifies a lot of the turn 6 miracle based plays, which are becoming more and more common in this meta. But with Miss Marvel being what it is, this deck can compete very well on 2 vertical lanes with the She-Not, of course, and I just said She-Not at the same time, I meant She-Hulk and Infinite, because you're able to attack 2 lanes very effectively, whereas a lot of the Miss Marvel decks seem to go a little wide. Darkhawk does give you some vertical power, but it's not often enough to beat both a She-Hulk and an Infinite. So this deck is very capable in the current meta, without question. And then going to number 4, we have Miss Ongoing. Now, this is kind of a surprising one. This deck, and I did do the statistics from Infinite, so this deck is performing very well. Its play rate's a little lower. You're seeing about 900 games on this particular deck, but it's performing. Miss Marvel continues to be very popular, so the addition of something like a Super Scroll can absolutely wreck your opponents. But most importantly, it is just straight up an ongoing shell that utilizes Mystique. I love the Onslaught Claw, Iron Man, and of course you have the Cosmo and the Mr. Fantastic. This is a straight up ongoing list that does really, really well in the current meta. Surprising to see that you're not running a Spectrum in this deck, but it doesn't need it because you're really just applying as much vertical pressure with Iron Man Onslaught, but also the horizontal pressure with Miss Marvel, Mr. Fantastic, Claw, and of course the Onslaught on top into a singular location in the mid. It's a tremendous amount of power with that Onslaught being done. So anyways, very powerful, very flexible with the Mystique as well. You have so many different options to hit with Mystique. A very strong deck running a 59% win rate. Then we have Loki by Night. This has been a deck that has been very consistent for the last little while. Absolutely one of the best performers at 58% win rate. It basically has all the things that you would expect. It has the Rogue as the tech against the Miss Marvel, which is increasingly popular right now. It does have the Werewolf with the Coulson, and of course, the linchpin of the entire deck, which is Loki. Loki allows you to very confidently steal your opponent's resources and then play them against them with that negative cost. If you have the Quinjet on the board, it's even cheaper. What's amazing about this deck is if you have Werewolf by Night on the board, every on reveal you play, even at an additional discount, it'll keep bouncing around. And even if you don't manage to pull Loki, you generate so much vertical power with the Werewolf by Night because you have almost entirely on reveals in this deck. And so, I mean, Collector loves it, Loki loves it, Werewolf loves it. It's just a very versatile deck that as you play it more often, you're going to be a little more confident with, because it's honestly one of the absolute best in the game. Now, as we move to Shuri and Sauron, I got to say that this deck, although it seems like Alex is the same boring thing all the time, it is the same boring thing all the time, but it is still one of the absolute best decks in Marvel Snap. This deck continues to perform, and if you're relatively early in your game experience and you're like, you know, I'm early pool 3 or whatever, this has no Series 4 or 5 cards. This is one of the cheapest decks in Marvel Snap, and it is consistently one of the best decks in Marvel Snap. So if you want a competitive list that you don't have to spend too much money on, this is it right here. This is the deck. So for a lot of people who are kind of free to play or just still kind of climbing through the ranks, this is the one, and it's worth talking about because at a 58% win rate, it still trades with like legitimately the most pay-to-win centric decks out there, right? The Lokis and everything else, right? This still trades with it, and it's one of the cheapest decks you can build. So always worth talking about. Shuri, Sauron, absolutely phenomenal. Now, going to deck number 7, I can't believe it, but it's Cerebro 5. Now, before we get into it, one thing worth noting is the vast majority of people that watch this video aren't subscribed. So if you do enjoy my content, I kindly ask that you consider subscribing. YouTube's a little strange, and it just helps to ensure that you see my videos in the future. I'd really appreciate your support. But Cerebro 5 is one of my favorite decks in the game. Not because it's like incredible, but it is a 57% win rate for Cerebro. My voice is starting to give out here. I think it's great. I think it's great. And yes, you're running no 1-drops, only 2-drops. You got that Luke Cage, you got the Man Thing, you got so many good pieces to this deck. It's just so much fun to play. If I'm playing Marvel Snap just to straight up chill, this is the deck I'm playing. It is so fun, and the addition of Miss Marvel just simply makes it better. It's really good. It's really fun. And ultimately, guys, it is a ton of fun to play. I don't know if I keep saying fun, but really, it is. It's awesome. So I do recommend Cerebro 5 for anybody that wants to experiment with the Cerebro style decks, but just haven't had a chance to yet. This one is an absolute clapper. Now we go on to number 8, which is Bounce by Night. So again, a werewolf style deck. Werewolf's one of the best cards in Marvel Snap right now. And as a result, you are seeing lots of werewolf. Now this particular deck utilizes the Darkhawk with the bounce combination of Beast and Falcon to continue generating value and disruption against your opponent. You don't run things like a Rock Slide here because you just keep bouncing that Korg back and discounting the Korg and then bouncing it back again and stuff like that, right? Once you get the play pattern of this deck, it is one of the best in the game, although I will tell you it is challenging to play. It can be a bit of a challenge on like when you bounce, how you bounce, which cards you play. You know, the actual order of operations, one might say, can be important. And the draw pattern is important too, because you want to make sure you have Beast nice and early to discount the cards you're playing, because they often get discounted to 0, which is very notable here. You also want to try and bounce that hood off the board and keep it in your hand. So you have these multiple demons, but no hoods on the board. So anyways, a very complex deck to play, but one of the most fun, especially if you're into puzzling and playing Marvel Snap. Number 9, we have Debuff Evolutionary. This deck has slidden down the win rates. It's still 56%, but it's still solid. It's not seeing much play, but it is still one of the best decks in the game. And what's interesting about this is that High Evolutionary seems to come in like these massive waves where like everyone's playing Evo, then no one's playing Evo. Well, right now, no one's playing Evolutionary, which is kind of crazy because it is still one of the absolute best decks in the game. It can trade very effectively. The amount of debuff potential being done here is crazy. Luke Cage is not really in the meta outside of the Cerebro-based deck. So really, like, you're kind of getting off scot-free with this deck. Like, you're able to do so much damage, and that free abomination comes out on turn 6 or 5 way more often than you would anticipate. So I really do like this deck. It is extremely capable, and really no one's playing it. So it might be the time to be playing High Evolutionary right now. And then finally, number 10, we have Destroy. Now, Destroy at a 55% win rate might surprise people. It is by far the most popular deck in the meta right now at a 10% meta share, but that's because people are countering a Nihilist. Actually, I should just say that Destroy's just been super popular all the time, because that's just what it is. People like Destroy. 55% is still solid. It'll get you into Infinite, it'll win you Infinity tickets, it'll win you at whatever you need to win, but it's just there are a couple better choices in the meta currently, but Destroy just feels good. It's a good old feel-good deck that feels great, that plays well, that counters the Nihilist-based gameplay. So if you're against the Nihilist players, like Destroy just eats them up completely. Just be very wary of Lockdown. Lockdown tends to spell a bit of a disaster for Destroy because with the Professor X's and everything else, it can be difficult to kind of keep up with your Destroy-based mechanics when you're getting locked out of locations on turn 4 with all the ramp that's going on right now. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, hitting the plus button, the like button, is the best thing you do to support my content. And as always, I hope to see you in the next Marvel Snap video.